This week we're finishing Thorn by Intisar Khanani, otherwise known as We've Got Some Glue to Make. Sorry.
Hi readers, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
Want to see what's next on our TBR list? Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Instagram for a sneak peek at upcoming content or to help us pick our next book. Jordan got me fucked up. That's how this episode is starting. We're choosing violence.
I'm sorry. There is a tie-in to Thorn.
Later.
But this was revelatory for me too, because I thought this was like common knowledge.
No, it is fucking not.
at least in this genre. And I am by no means, I'm not like an English lit major. No, that's not who I am. I just read a lot and know things.
That could be a t-shirt. I read a lot and know things instead of the Game of Thrones. Yeah, Jordan's got me fucked up. So there's a bit at the end of Thorn that we'll get to, and there's like trials, and she's like, oh, it kind of is loosely related to the story called Tam Lin. You should probably talk about it because
Okay, I just skimmed through the original. It's The Ballad of Tam Lin by Robert Burns, Scottish poet. I think he's Scottish. Again, haven't read it. Haven't read the original, at least not in full, because one, it's hard to read.
Fair.
But I have heard of this original like ballad / fairy tale for years, like since I first started reading like fantasy. And the premise is that a woman from a village falls in love with this dude, and the fairy queen, and I am very, very loosely paraphrasing this. This is not like Robert Burns' original. This is like what I have learned about this story of Tam Lin over the years, because it's been bastardized like several times over. But basically, she falls in love with the dude. The fairy queen on her nightly ride with her court sees this dude, says, he's mine, and takes him and turns him into like her loyal knight. And he's kind of brainless and like doesn't recognize his old first love. And so this village maiden says, fuck you, fairy queen, and like meets the fairy queen and her court as they're on their ride and says, I want my love Tam Lin back. And the fairy queen says, oh, that's fun. Sure, you can have him back if you can hold on to him. And so the fairy queen makes this deal with the woman, and she's like, I will hold on to my love for the rest of my life. And so she pulls Tam Lin off his horse. He's like a fairy knight, and holds on to him. And he starts turning into all of these various scary creatures, a snake, a bear, etc., and attacks her as she's holding on to him. But she never lets go. And in the end, basically, she wins against the fairy queen. Tam Lin wakes up from his stupor.
Yes.
Did I say it right? And everyone lives happily ever after. And that's like the loose ballad of Tam Lin as far as I understand it.
And through that retelling by Jordan, you were probably getting some weird little brain tingles. That's why I'm choosing violence, because is that not the exact fucking plot of ACOTAR? And no one told me. I'm so mad. I feel significantly changed as a person, because everyone always calls ACOTAR like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's literally the story, and it's named Tam Lin, and it's the same plot, and the fairy queen steals the guy. What the actual fuck?
Yeah.
So anyway, readers, I'm gonna feel stupid if everybody else knew that, and I'm just like sitting here in ignorance, but also, what the fuck?
And I can't explain why I know that. I just have been, again, like, I think I've read several authors who have used like this as a basis, because it's such an old ballad. It's such an old story. And like all the original Irish and Scottish folk tales about like the fairies have been around for centuries. And so I think they've had like various iterations. So I think so many current authors draw from them, like all authors do draw from these historical stories and legends and fairy tales. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just put it together, and there we go.
I am not okay.
But so it came up because, again, we'll circle back to it at the end, but there are elements of the Tam Lin story in Thorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also apparently the Goose Girl. Nothing is original. There are no original ideas.
Not anymore. And that's okay. But that's why we keep reading them, because we like the stories.
That is true. Fair.
I'm sorry for hurting you, Katie. I didn't mean to.
Wow. Yeah, well, just assume that you're also going to be hurt in this episode, because this is all the sad things that happen.
Sad and dark, and
yeah.
This is where a lot of the trigger warnings come into play.
100%. So we left off with Alira being invited, or Thorn being invited into the dinner by Kestrin. And so she kind of gets dolled up in whatever, clothes that Lady Valka left for her in her trunks. And she picks the least gross of them and goes to this dinner. And basically the summation of the dinner is that Kestrin 100% knows that she's the true princess.
But this dinner is weird, because doesn't he have her escorted to a hidden room? Or no, that's later.
That's later.
Oh,
yeah, sorry. This one is just a dinner party, and she meets his cousin, and it feels like it's gonna be something, but he's just a cousin.
This gives me major Crown Jewel vibes again, because doesn't Shivraith take Meliara to a small dinner party gathering to be like, these are my real people, I want you to be well read into what's actually going on in my kingdom?
What the fuck? Yeah, because that's basically what this is, because it's just a tight-knit dinner party, and they have snarky commentary back and forth, but it's just all his real people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the summation of the dinner party. And then basically at the end, he pops back as she's getting back into the carriage, and she's like, oh, I didn't think that I was going to see you again. And he's like, well, I just wanted to invite you into another party and see you one more time. And it's like, oh,
that's so cute. This is Prince Kestrin trying not to look like he's trying.
Yeah. Though it does lead into a point where you kind of wish that he would not try at all.
Yeah. So, right.
Yeah.
Because so Valka is gone. She's out of the palace when this dinner party is held.
Yeah. And so she didn't know about it until she found out about it. And then she was big mad.
Big mad.
And this is the depressing part. So, Alira is just going about her business. And then she's still sleeping in the stable with Falada, because that's the only place she feels comfortable, until the head Ostler,
I don't know.
Whatever the fuck the title is for that.
Yeah.
He kind of walks in and he's like, got some bad news.
We got some glue to make.
Oh my god.
That was a little dark. I'm sorry.
Jordan is just over here hurting my feelings.
It was too perfect of a
Whoa.
I'm sorry, readers.
But yeah, basically, Lady Falca found out about the dinner, and she's like, what the actual fuck? I'm gonna hurt her, where it really hurts. And she has decided that, Falada is unrideable and he needs to be killed. And Alira is fucked up about it. I'm fucked up about it. Everybody's crying.
When I started the reread on this book and I met Falada as a character, everything clicked into place. And I'm like, oh, I remembered why this book is so sad. It's because the horse dies.
I wish I had remembered that, because
no. You didn't remember?
No. Oh no. I got fucked up all over again. Because the whole time, every time Falada said anything, I'm like, wow, why don't I remember his character more?
You blacked it out for a reason. Did you ever see I Am Legend with Will Smith? Okay, Falada dying is like the dog dying in I Am Legend.
Yeah, it's just really fucking sad.
But Falada asks her to do something.
Yeah, and it's kind of gross.
Also in the original fairy tale.
Whoa. Ooh,
yeah,
ugh.
Same thing.
Yeah, so this gives me not good vibes. This is when the story gets kind of creepy and dark. Basically, Falada asked that his head is mounted on the city wall so that he can still watch over her, which don't love as a concept.
No, fucking creepy.
No. And it's worse when she gets it done. She pawns off a necklace that her maid gave her originally, and she's kind of sad about it, but it's the only money she has. And it gets worse because when they describe what Falada now looks like mounted onto the wall, he has grotesque stitches over his mouth and eyes. It's Y'all are
It's dark. We go from like YA new light fairy tale retelling to super dark.
Yeah.
And then because we also learn more about what's going on in the city shortly, right?
Yeah. And it kind of gives me Daughter of the Forest vibes, this whole part where
Yeah.
it's just like bad news after bad news. Because basically, after that, you know, she's going up to talk to the princess at the palace to, you know, give her a piece of her fucking mind, like, you absolute bitch. And Kestrin is like, oh my gosh, you're here. And she's like, I'm a little upset right now. And he's like, why? Did someone die? And she's like, yeah.
Yes. Yes. 100% yes.
And he's like, ooh, isn't that good? Joke did not land.
Is this the scene where he gives her a cloak?
I think it's immediately after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't wish.
He knows that he kind of like fucked up during this because she's obviously like visibly upset that her horse was killed. And he's even like, oh, that like white horse that you walk around with all the time. And she's like, obviously that one.
The only other horse I'm hanging out with. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she goes back to the stables because she's like, I'm not going to I'm done with this shit, basically. And her friends at the stables, Laurel and Violet, who we haven't really talked about, but Laurel is kind of like this like matronly mom type. And then Violet, Ash, and Oak. Ash and Oak are boys, Violet's a girl. They kind of make a found family unit or whatever. And basically they tell her like, hey, like next time there's some like bullshit from the palace like that where they're like trying to hurt you, tell us and we'll find a way around it. Like, you're our family, we'll deal with the palace. And it's just this cute little like found family moment in the midst of very sad grief. Yeah. Except it gets a little bit more sad because she tries to actually talk to Falada as he's like mounted on the walls, and every time she like goes to like really say anything, all of the little like guards or whatever are like, what the fuck are you doing? And she's like, nothing, and runs away. And remember that because it comes back later when she's accused of witchcraft.
And in the original fairy tale, so Falada's head again is mounted on the castle gates, and as the princess in the original fairy tale walks through the palace gates, the horse's head calls out like, oh, bride to be, something something something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the original. Like, good for the author for staying true to it,
but also like, why? it's sad. So Valka sends for Alira because there's another letter that she really needs to write, and Alira is like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore.
I loved this scene.
I did too, because it's her coming into her like agency, and she's deciding like, nope, if these are my circumstances, like, you fucked up your end of the deal, you came after me, like, I'm not going to help you anymore.
And you see how not bright Valka is in this moment, because she's like, here, I'll give you a mountain estate. And Alira's like, you mean the mountain estate that's rightfully mine that you stole from me, as well as my body and my identity?
No. I don't think so.
But Valka can't think of anything else. She's like, I need you to write this letter. And Alira's just sitting there like happy as a clam. I don't think I will.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because at the beginning of the scene, like, Valka isn't there yet. And so Alira's kind of like sneaking and snooping around her rooms. And she finds letters that were intended for Lady Valka from her father, just hanging out in her little like personal box of letters or whatever. And Alira has this observation, like, she's literally that fucking stupid that she's leaving evidence that this isn't actually her identity, and she's just assuming that nobody's going to be like snooping around her stuff. Like, have you never lived in a palace? Like,
exactly. Well, and prior to, like, this just kind of sheds light on how Valka and Alira's friendship kind of deteriorated, and like, well, were they ever friends to begin with?
Yeah.
Because shortly after this, we find out like why they're no longer friends.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go into it?
Yeah, you should tell the story because I'm just going to get like big, mad, and sweaty.
So part of the confrontation between Valka and Thorn is like a recollection of what happened when they were kids, which is Valka threw like a fucking hissy fit. Like, I imagine they were like preteens, so maybe like 9 or 10 years old. And she says that a servant, like, she accused this small serving girl of stealing like a piece of jewelry, I think.
It was like a brooch,
Yeah.
whatever that word is.
And when in fact Valka had taken it herself. And Alira saw everything happen. She knows that the servant was innocent. She knows Valka was lying. And so as Valka is like protesting her innocence and accusing the servant girl and like telling the guards and whoever's there that the servant girl needs to be hanged, the servant girl is like crying and screaming. And Alira, like this is Alira stepping up probably for the first and last time, like in her childhood, to be like, actually, it was Lady Valka. And it is Alira's proclamation that sends Valka and like ruins her reputation basically, because Valka was on track to marry Alira's brother and turn into like the next queen. And this basically destroyed her reputation because everyone found out that Valka was lying and she in fact was the thief. But it also kind of embarrassed Alira too in the moment because she was kind of called out for being basically two-faced and like stabbing a fellow like aristocrat in the back.
Because I think Alira even says too that this was the point when her brother and her mom started treating her different because they saw her as outing like one of their own.
Like it kind of speaks to the class system that is a major issue in Thorn, which kind of becomes increasingly more visible as we progress through the story. But there's a distinct divide between the classes in this world, and it's not pretty. So we get that interaction, and she kind of basically tells Valka to go suck one and then leaves. Except she's brought back again by Kestrin for another dinner. Except this one she's watching instead of enjoying herself. And she's brought into this room. You know, she has some like food laid out for her on the table. Weird.
It was super weird.
I didn't like this.
No, and I don't know that it was necessary.
No, it seemed like an additional... I don't know. It seemed like it was supposed to serve a purpose, and it doesn't. Not
Yeah. So basically, she's like watching through this like one-sided window, two-sided.
It's like a wooden grate balcony thing.
Yeah, and so she can watch them, but nobody knows that she's up there listening to them. And kind of the main like point I think of this is that they're asking Lady Valka, or who's pretending to be the princess, what they're going to do during the wedding. And she's like, oh, I think that we should give, apple cakes to all of the, kids and orphans and lowly people. And everybody's like, oh, like what a wonderful idea. They'll like really love you if you just give them that little, cake or whatever. And basically, Alira has this moment of like, that's all. Like, you picked the smallest of all of the desserts to give them, and now they're for sure going to love you. But like, what a shallow,
the thing that would hurt you or cost you the least.
Yeah,
but would mean the most to them.
And it's kind of like a classism moment. And then Kestrin, after the dinner, like comes up to see her, and she's like big mad, and she's like, apple cakes, really? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, that's the least that you could give them, and they don't care. And then she like barges past him or something, and she's just big mad.
Oh, I think it's in this scene where she storms away from the dinner, and she's kind of wrapped in her threadbare clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And he sees her like basically shivering in the winter wind, like walking back to the stables. And soon after that,
the present arrives for our dear Alira.
I love this device in a story.
That's fair. It's cute.
It's so cute. I mean, it's been done 1,000 times before, but like the hero noticing like the heroine needs something, and he feels it's so cute.
Yeah. So she unwraps it, and it's like a bright like blue cloak or something, but it has like a leaf or a feather like pin on it.
Oh my God, that just clicked for me.
So
holy fuck.
When I first I thought it was from Red Hawk, and I was very confused, but it's from Prince Kestrin.
I think it's a feather, right?
Because I thought it was a feather.
Right? Because it symbolizes something else.
What does it symbolize? She's like flapping her arms, and there are no thoughts happening in this brain.
But I don't want to spoil anything for...
We'll keep this in our pocket and come back to it.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything.
I thought it was from Red Hawk, and I'm like, nice.
I just did interpretive dance for Katie with no results.
Honestly. You were so lucky, too. We have like a curtain on this window that we're facing, because otherwise it's just your neighbors watching you like flap your
God.
Sorry. Anyways, she gets the cloak, etc., etc. Lady Valka sends for Alira again. And girl is probably getting her steps in the number of times that
She goes
has
back and forth to the palace. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, Velka's getting a little bit more desperate because her mother has sent her another letter that's like, why the fuck aren't you responding? We're on our way right now. And Valka is like, okay, like, I will give you this estate if you write this final letter. And Illyria is, again, like, LOL, you're so disconnected from your circumstances, my circumstances, what's happening, like, big fat no. And so Illyria goes, out about her day. She goes into the pasture. And I think this is when she finds the wind again. But I'm, like, not really sure. The wind from before.
Yeah. The wind says, like, it's... Yeah.
You're here.
You're here. Like, and like Illyria Thorn is very happy to see her friend because she views the wind as a friend.
Yeah.
And I think it's in this scene where the wind actually makes a full sentence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And she's like, wow, like, what the fuck? Like, you're really excited to see me.
But in the context now that we know how everything ends, that makes way more sense for why the wind can speak a little bit more.
That does.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And she basically says that she's been telling the wind, like,
everything from her entire life.
Yeah. Like,
mortifying.
Childhood secrets. I would die. And you find out immediately after why I would die because, oh, no,
there's more
later.
sadness to go through.
Hold off your death for now.
So Violet has been like a secondary character consistently, and she's like the pretty one, I think, but she's very sweet. And so
it's sad too because she has like a lover.
She's got like a boyfriend that she's been meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Thorn goes back to the stables, and Violet is missing. Like, she went out to go into town, and she hasn't come back, and it's late at night. And everyone is starting to get worried, including her brothers. And so they send out a team of men to look for her, and they can't find her. And this is where Thorn really steps up.
It is. So she goes out and she's like, you know what? I got this homeboy who owes me a favor. Like, this is,
you know, got a homeboy.
Well, she has someone that, very interesting circumstances that she came into. And so she's like, okay, Red Hawk, like, I really need this favor. I'll pay you anything. And he's like, payment? Like, I owe you a debt.
We're good. I got you.
Yeah. And so he's like, you know what? Just go back to the house. I'll send someone back in an hour if we've found her, but like, we will find your friend. And she's like, okay, thank God, like, somebody's like gonna handle this. And so she gets back to the stables. They're waiting. And it's really tense and sad. And you kind of are hopeful that they're going to find Violet. And then when they do, you're like, oh, I wish they hadn't almost. Because Red Hawk does successfully, his men do find her, and she is in not good shape.
No. And this is, so I think the author handled this scene or like this sequence of events really well.
I think so.
Without actually articulating what really happened.
Yeah.
So Violet is found. She's unconscious. She's beaten.
Horribly.
Very much so. There's a line, and this is going to sound very graphic, but I think it shows how well the author handled this scene. And it's a way you can handle such violent scenes and such like graphic issues gracefully. And so Thorn is helping clean Violet up, and she makes a comment that she wasn't certain if the blood near her ankle or near her foot was from an injury there or from another location. I'm paraphrasing here, but like that, if you can piece that together, that's what happened to Violet.
Yeah.
So she never outright says what happened. She was raped and beaten to death, nearly.
Yeah,
because she was found.
I think it's kind of interesting. So when I first read this, I didn't realize to what extent Violet had been like brutalized, because it reads that she was just like beaten, and there's kind of like allusions to other things happening. But it's interesting because Illyria eventually goes back to thank Red Hawk for what he did and for finding her. And Red Hawk is the only one that like in very black and white terms like addresses what happened to Violet. Like everyone uses this very like metaphorical language about she was brutalized, she was attacked, etc. And he's the only one in the story that says she was beat and raped. And it's kind of a required moment, I think, of you can't just use this like kind of flowery metaphorical language for something this horrible. Like it sometimes requires just saying exactly what it is to really like understand the circumstances, and especially when Red Hawk's role is now to like bring justice to that. So I think it's a requirement to like say it for what it is instead of using this like, you know, kind of metaphorical like illusionary words around it, and then say like, this is what happened, we are demanding justice. So it was a nice like refreshing,
I think
handled well.
the progression of how everything played out, because I think it's hard to find a balance. I think it's hard to find a balance for certain authors, right, in going into too much detail and being graphic in the moment versus discussing what happened by like other characters around them. So like you said, calling out like, no, this is what happened to this character, absolutely necessary. But describing in detail like as it's happening, not so much. And I think we see that in Daughter of the Forest. That's where the line gets a little murky. Where
because sort of related, did you ever watch 13 Reasons Why?
No.
Yeah, it was really brutal, but it was interesting because there's a scene in one of the episodes where they actually show her suicide, and there was a bunch of outrage about that episode because I guess you're like the best way to handle the topic of suicide is you never actually show the act, because that can kind of like
it can trigger people.
Yeah, and it can like influence them into completing suicide. And so it's an interesting, I wonder if there's like parallels between where you can talk about it and you can talk about the after effects, but there's no reason to talk about the act itself, if it's like similar for sexual assault and rape in books and movies. So I don't know. It might be an interesting, if any of our readers are like do research or outreach, like I would be interested to know if that's like the best way to handle those, because there are definitely books where it's like, is that really necessary to go into that detail? Like it's a truth that a lot of people have lived, and I don't know that they would necessarily appreciate it being like put back in their face again while they're just trying to live their life. But I don't know.
It really, thinking about it and how authors handle it makes me angry when I think of how TV producers handle it. Like I'd say the biggest violator of like not finding a balance or anything in the Game of Thrones. Like really, like, okay, apparently it sells.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. So I read another article about Game of Thrones, and it was basically a dismantling of the concept of like women as lesser and like rape as a use for control, and how it's unnecessary in a fantasy land that we have created. Like, why does this fantasy land have to follow along the same lines of society? Like, why? And it's like, I never thought about that. Like, if you're creating this whole land from your imagination, like, why do we need to include that as a reality? It's like, it's interesting, because I don't.
You brought that up when we were discussing Daughter of the Forest too, and I think we came to like no conclusion at all, because you can find reasons to include it, like valuable reasons. I think it's the manner in which it's handled. Interesting to note, because we've been watching K-dramas, and K-dramas are very clean.
Yeah.
I haven't watched a lot of like darker ones, like psychological or action thrillers with the level of gore and violence. I don't know how, like, I don't know what the line is on their production value, but I know we wouldn't get like a violent rape scene like we would see in Game of Thrones in any of like a Korean produced drama. Like, I don't think so.
I think we talked about that too, because in French filmmaking, love and like sexually explicit scenes are like totally like the norm, and like, oh yeah, that's titties, like, okay, cool. But violence is like a no, like that's when your rating goes up. And so it's interesting that in like American culture it's reversed, and then in Korean culture it's like you probably won't get more than like a kiss.
Because like, why do we need it? Like, why do we need to see that? You see that on the news.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need that in our media?
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for censoring anything.
No, yeah.
But
it's also intent, I think, matters. Like, what is your intent in having this rape scene? Is it just to make this character seem like more powerful or like controlling? And like, is there a way that you can do that without subjugating women or even subjugating like men too? Like, I don't know that we need to give this form of control and like power dynamics such a big like role in media and things we consume. That's a threat every day of your life. Like, I don't need to be reminded.
But not in our escapism.
Yeah. But I will say that this book handled it well. And especially, too, when the next scene is like her brothers. And I don't know if they're her actual brothers.
No, but they feel like it.
Yeah. They go to the castle or the palace and they like basically are demanding justice. They're like, with the dude that did this, there's no way that he's not bragging about it. Like, this is insane. You guys need to do something. And it's frustrating because the captain is basically like, how would we be able to find the guy? And they're like, that is your whole job?
Ask questions. Go into the town. Find out. Like, it's
interview people. Like, that is like the bare bones of your job. And basically they come back and they're like, the dude will not fucking do shit about this. And Alira is like, I, again, know someone who will do something. And so she goes to Kestrin and she's like, hey, my friend.
Oh, this scene
made me so mad.
Big mad.
Yeah, because you have to think from Alira's perspective, like, this is a man that she has some form of trust with. And she's like, he's the prince of this land. Like, he can probably do something. And she's like, hey, my friend was brutalized. The captain said that he can't do anything. Can you do something? And his response.
Oh my God. I wanted to stab this character.
This is the opposite of a competency kink. This is like an anti.
I'll see. Basically, I'll see what I can do is what Prince Kestrin says. Like, that is it. Yeah. That is the entire summation of their interaction, which is, my friend was brutally beaten and raped. I know we can find these men. What can you do, Prince Kestrin? Prince Kestrin?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds like a job for the castle guard, but I'll see what I can do.
It made me so mad because he literally said, well, I mean, like, I normally trust him with these things. So if that's what he says, you know, I'm inclined to believe him. It's like, you motherfucker.
Also, he's a sorcerer. Like, use some of your fucking magic to figure out this crime.
God.
And so Thorn is ticked.
Yeah. And so she does what any reasonable person with a very high, powerful thief friend, she's like, hey, Red Hawk, the actual justice system in this world does not work. Let's use some, like, you know, mob justice. And he's like, I am here for it. And we again get into more of the like justice system and like how it only works for the rich people, and you have the second justice system that only works for poor people that is made by the people themselves, and the palace is mad about that because like alternate justice systems are like somewhat questionable. Vigilante justice. But it's interesting because she's like, okay, but how am I going to pay for this? Because this is kind of a big ask. Like, you were asking to go find people and then hang them.
Small interruption.
Yeah.
We talked last episode about the comparisons to Tamora Pierce's Toronto universe. This is the thief and the king, right?
Yeah.
Like, mere copy.
100%.
What?
Yeah. And so I think that's why I got bamboozled, because I thought, so I was rooting for Kestrin. I'm like, okay, they got some like snarky dialogue. Like, he like knows her. Like, this is cool. But then we get this scene where he's like, well, I don't know. I'll see what I can do about it. And then she goes to the thief and he's like, I will handle it. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's the love interest now, right? No. And it made me upset. And now I know I like the love in the book. It's like cute, but at that point it was kind of like you're not so redeemable to me.
I'm so
Jordan is
shocked.
like, she is gazing off into the distance, eyes glazed over.
There's so many parallels to Tamora Pierce's book.
There's a lot. It's just the character is different, like the main heroine.
Yeah.
But everything else is super similar.
Okay. Well,
yeah. But
go Red Hawk.
Yeah, honestly, because he immediately finds these fuckers and then brings them into the square. He's set up this whole like informal, formal hanging.
Oh man!
And they were fucked up when they were hanging from the noose. Like,
yeah, whipped before they were like. Because I think Red Hawk says something about like they need to their end cannot be quick. Like, they need to experience the pain of what they committed.
Yeah, and
you feel satisfied. You're like, just do it.
And I think he's like, either he said that to Alira or something, but like when you when Alira stumbles upon the hanging, there's just like a arrow stuck through the like wood thing with like 3 hawk feathers hanging from it. And like, what a fucking whoa. Vigilante justice, but like make it hot.
So the commentary on like justice as a theme in this book is really interesting because Red Hawk says like sometimes we need to serve like a violent justice to protect or to prevent and deter people from committing these acts again, which is a very interesting commentary on justice from the author because does deterrence actually work? Because a lot of things say it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's hard too because in this scene it makes you feel good. You're like, fuck yeah, they needed to be made as the example, but it's like statistics don't always show that that's necessarily the case.
And also like a court hearing.
There was no like judge.
How
jury.
do we know that these are the right dudes?
Yeah, but we trust Red Hawk, competency.
And I think this is where like the fantasy element comes in. Like, oh, this is the kind of escapism and violence that you would want. And the thing is like, oh, justice actually gets carried out against the right people.
Yeah.
Does not work in the real world.
Though I will say, maybe this is now the time to talk about it. Well, no, I think it's a little bit later. But when we actually do get an example of the justice system working as it's supposed to, it doesn't work at all. So maybe Red Hawk's version of justice is maybe.
That's true.
Yeah. So the next scene or whatever, the men are hung, justice has been served. She goes out with Corbet again with the geese, and all of a sudden, he is, I'm not skipping anything, right?
I think there's like a combination of circumstances that happen. Alira is passing through the gates this is at some point in the scenes we've discussed, but she's walking through the palace gates and Falada's head actually speaks to her and calls her princess as she's walking through. And there's guards nearby that like witness that, witness her talking to the dead horse's head.
This scene kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies because you can just fucking imagine how bent out of shape that soldier is that was like watching like this horse with like fucked up stitches over its mouth is like talking now and this woman is responding like, ain't no way. I do not get paid enough for this shit.
No wonder she got reported.
Yeah, honestly. She got reported.
And accused of witchcraft.
Yeah.
Which is illegal.
Yeah. But first we have this really additionally horrible scene in the field.
Yeah.
She's walking with Corbet and all of a sudden they're far enough away that they're no longer seen. And Corbet is like, I have protection from someone at the palace. I'm basically going
Fuck you, Valka.
Yeah. I'm basically going to hurt you and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And she's
Except someone can.
Yes. And this is where Kestrin makes a comeback.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. This scene was very satisfying, but at the same time, like I still wasn't quite certain what was happening until
100%.
Like it smacked me in the face.
Yeah.
So it's Corbet, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Corbet is attacking her, and then doesn't the witch appear?
Yes. Yeah. So Corbet's attacking Alira. Alira's fighting back, and then all of a sudden this like wind like yeets the fuck out of him. And then the lady appears and she's like, aren't you thankful that I did this for you? And she's like, what is happening right now? But then Kestrin runs in on the horse and he's like, I was actually the one that was doing that. What are you talking about?
Okay, I think it played out slightly different because I thought so Corbet's attacking her, like wind cyclone, like kicks the shit out of him. And then the lady, like the witch appears and says, look and see who your wind truly is.
Oh, yeah. See, this scene was really confusing.
It is,
so it
right?
does not surprise me that we have different remembrance of.
Well, okay. So the witch says that to Thorn and she's like, what the fuck? It's just my friend the wind.
Yeah.
And then she sees Kestrin galloping like gallantly on his horse.
That makes more sense. Yeah. So Kestrin is the wind.
Kestrin is the wind,
Surprise.
which makes everything have so much more significance later on.
Okay, so the thing in my pocket from the first episode, we're pulling it back out. Wouldn't Kestrin have known the whole time that wasn't the princess if he was like talking to her through the wind her whole entire life?
Okay. So we had a long sidebar. We had to turn our mics off so Katie and I, because we
were confused.
Yeah, we both read like certain scenes differently and remembered different orders of events here. So there is a scene where in the very beginning, when Kestrin visits her in her bedroom very creepily at night, and she doesn't know and she doesn't know it's Prince Kestrin, it's just this random sorcerer. He says to her that he like wanted to see her.
Oh, yeah.
Like he wanted to see her with his own eyes for the first time. And I think that's your clue in later. And then the witch says that he couldn't see her, or like the wind. So as the wind, he was like exerting his magical influence across thousands of miles, apparently.
Oh, yeah. And it's like takes a really incredibly powerful sorcerer to do that to like a specific bedroom.
Yeah. So the wind has been her companion since childhood, but because it's the wind, it can't actually see her. It just recognizes her spirit, I think.
But I mean, like, wouldn't he know that like this adorable girl who's very gentle and was bullied by her brother, now all of a sudden she's been like told bitch, like didn't raise any red flags?
So there's another scene about halfway through where the wind makes a reappearance, right? Like, so she's been in I forget the name of the country now.
Manaya.
So she's been working in Manaya for a while, and she's out in the pasture, and the wind hasn't visited her in months. Not since she left. The wind like circles around her feet, and that's the scene where the wind is like, hey, sorry it took me so long. It's like the first time the wind strings the sentence together. And I think it's that moment where the prince realizes that it's her.
Oh, okay. So that would make sense, because that's about like when he starts making more direct overtures about like, hey, princess. And she's like, what do you mean,
I'm
princess?
not the princess.
Yeah, it's like, girl, who are you convincing? Yeah, that makes sense. But still, I was like, wait a second, well, if he's the wind and then the Valka's the princess in disguise, then how did...
But then you think about how if she's been talking to the wind since she was a kid, and the wind has been her constant companion, and now we have this mystery of why this big, powerful kingdom actually wanted her as a bride, and it's because Prince Kestrin was like basically practicing his magic, stumbled across her as a child, made friends with her, and decided without any like consent from her or like development, like, oh, this is the girl I want to marry. I'm going to ask my dad to go on a delegation. That's how she was selected, because she was friends with the wind.
So it is interesting when we use this with the parallels with Elena, the Turtle series or whatever, because I feel like they had similar problems where the prince in her, like there was too much history almost for them to have like a actual working romantic relationship. And so the author kind of spun it off to go be with the thief. But it's interesting that in this, Intisar Khanani chose to still make them together despite all of the weirdness and the next couple scenes that also add weirdness. You know what I mean?
Well, and ultimately, so I guess we can move forward in the next few scenes, because so she's attacked, witch appears, witch is like, I don't really give a shit about you, little princess. I'm here for him. And she threatens, it's the invisible choker around. And so she starts strangling Thorn right in front of Prince Kestrin. And he does the typical romantic hero moment.
Take me instead.
Don't hurt her. And witch is like, great, that's what I wanted. And
Perfect.
so he goes off with the witch and is kidnapped, and Thorn is like released.
Yeah.
To just chill on her own.
I think she just, because she takes his horse and she like goes up to the city gates, and they're like, saw the prince leaving on that horse and now he's gone. You need to come with us.
Hey, witch, what's going on?
This is great circumstances. You're now on trial for witchcraft. Yeah.
Super dark.
Yeah. And it's, we can get a little bit into the trial, and there's air quotes, heavy air quotes around the trial.
Was there a trial? I don't remember it.
Yeah. Because basically, it's like a board, and they just accuse her of witchcraft. They're like, you were seen talking to this like horse that's mounted on the wall. That's pretty weird. That's pretty sus. You've been talking to the wind, and the Goose Boy was reporting that, and then the Goose Boy also reported that you're doing some other sketchy stuff. And she's like, were there any like witnesses to any of this? And they're like, yeah, the Goose Boy. And it's like, okay,
that's all you got?
Is he the only witness? And they're like, that's the only one we need. It's like, okay. Can I maybe listen to the evidence? And they're like, we heard it earlier. You don't need to hear it. And she's like, I know that's how the justice system works. Dun dun. Law and order. Yeah. So now we kind of understand why Red Hawk was just having, extrajudicial hangings.
Authority.
Yeah.
Power.
Kind of checks out. Yeah, so she is basically about to be burned at the stake. Yeah. And one of the lords who's been kind of in the background, just like hanging out, one of the trusted advisors, tells her some really weird stuff. He's like, hey, just, this
Go talk to the fire.
Yeah.
That's fucking weird.
I was going to flower it up, but that's basically what he tells her.
But also weird that she just does it.
I know. She's like, okay. And it's funny too, because he says like, speak your truth. And although like white woman, like speak your truth.
My truth is not your truth.
Speak it into the fire. So she basically like whispers everything that has been happening.
It's dumb.
Including the body swap. And then she kind of looks at the fireplace and she's like, this looks a little weird.
She doesn't remember the one great thing that she was hidden behind.
That she literally was behind.
This felt like the author couldn't figure out how to get her out of the situation and needed like a week moment to be like, how can I set this up to move the story forward?
Yeah, it was a little bizarro because then the king pops out.
It's just the king chilling behind a fire, listening to a prisoner's confession because he has nothing better to do as the king of a mighty empire.
Yeah, the whole thing was really weird. And then he's like, oh yeah, you're the princess. I kind of knew it, but like, thank you for validating that. And then he invites her to dinner. She goes to the dinner, and this part is like really fucking dark.
Is this before or after the scene with the witch and Prince Kestrin?
Oh, this is before.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So she's sitting at dinner. She's kind of at the tail end of the table, and the king is next to the princess. And all of a sudden, he kind of interrupts everyone, and he's like, "Hey, princess, what do you think you would do if in these like crazy circumstances, if someone was impersonating the princess and like was giving a bunch of rumors about her and calling her a bitch and like she was being like disrespectful? What would you do to someone like that?" And Valka is like, oh, let me tell you, because she thinks that they're talking about Thorn. And she's like, I would shove her in a barrel, nailed through with nails, and then I would have her dragged behind a bunch of horses through the streets until she died. And he's like, well, Jeopardy, you won. Take her away.
For word from the original fairy tale.
Wild.
Sounds like an original fairy tale.
Yeah, it does, because that's really that's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's like some Saw shit.
Also, like, Valka is so dumb.
I know. I get it.
Like, really? You couldn't see that coming?
Read the room. Like, how did you not know? But that is something to be said about like people that are conceited or self-centered. They like think that everyone else is also living in their own world, like in their world, and they're like, oh yeah, like everyone hates her. Like we're 100% talking about her. Like, girl, open your eyes.
That's a very valid point. Like, it's hard to like understand those types of people and characters, but they're out there.
Yeah. Their worldview is just so like, okay.
Disconnected from reality.
Yeah. And so she gets dragged out by a bunch of guards. Not good. And everyone at the table is very confused.
And Alira is horrified.
Yeah.
Like, this is not justice.
Yeah. And I kind of love that about her character, because she's immediately like, my lord, or whatever you call kings, that's kind of fucked up. Like, can we maybe not do that much? And he's like, you're really trying to advocate for someone that literally took your body and place.
This is what we do to traitors. And she's like, oh, but we just hang her instead, which I kind of liked. Like, I like she was save her life and send her off to work in a workhouse. No, it was like you can still kill her, but like make it a little bit more merciful.
I did not even think about that. Like, I didn't think about other options besides hanging.
That's death.
Yeah, that checks out.
Have you seen Ever After yet? I know you have. Did you watch
it?
With
Drew Barrymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cute. It's a comfort movie for sure.
So the scene at the very end where she's like, her stepsister and her mother, she's like, go send them off to the Americas or find them a job.
Yeah.
Like you would expect that kind of response from like a Princess Alira type character.
Yeah.
And no, she's just like,
yeah, death is fine, but make it like less aggressive death.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, so everything's kind of wrapped up except, his name is not Kristen.
Prince Kestrin.
Kestrin, there we go. Kestrin is still,
kidnapped by the witch.
Yeah, and Alira's like, we should probably maybe
do something about that.
Yeah, help. And so she calls for the lady, and the lady's like, bet.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what happens.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the trials?
Yes. Okay. This is kind of where we come into the comparisons to Tamlin, the original ballad. So the witch comes, she has like a little powwow with Alira, and she's like, "Hey."
We don't use the word powwow.
Oh, I'll censor that.
I guess it's disrespectful.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I use it all the time too, and I'm like, that's a valid point.
Restarting. The witch comes to Alira, and they have like basically a girl chat, like a one-on-one where she's like, "Hey, listen, this is what happened to my mom." And she shows Princess Alira like a vision of her childhood where this is awful,
horrendous.
Oh my God. Like where previously we had a little bit of censoring going on with the level of violence.
No censoring.
Not at all. So Alira gets to watch as this woman is pinned to a tree, and her hands are stabbed by daggers to the tree. And then this man takes a sword out and basically cuts her.
Yeah.
Like,
in front of her child.
And then the woman is screaming and is in so much pain, she rips her own hands off the tree through the daggers to hold her intestines in, and then dies. And the man who did this looks disturbingly like Prince Kestrin. Yeah. It's his great-great-grandfather. This is the witch's history. She has been persecuting Prince Kestrin's family for generations, taking them out one by one. She is basically murdering the entire family line. Which, I don't know, I might do that too.
Yeah. She was like talking about her evidence, and I'm like, lady's got something, like, no.
But you kind of get a glimpse into the witch as a character. And she's described as not quite human.
Mm-hmm.
She's like
otherworldly or
made of fire.
Yeah.
And actually that connects, because doesn't Falada tell her about like, there's people made of fire and earth and people made of like dust and air?
Yeah, like horses are made of fire and earth, humans are made of earth, and then sorcerers are made out of fire. So it's almost like the djinn parallel. Like djinns are made out of...
But this makes sense if this is a comparison to the Tamlin fairy tale, and the witch is a fairy, not other human. And so she takes Prince Kestrin.
That makes sense.
So we flash back to where the witch is holding Prince Kestrin, and she walks Alira through this garden, and she sees a statue, and it's a statue of Prince Kestrin's grandfather, kind of like slumped over, like defeated. Good for him. He needed to be like turned into a statue, like crush that statue into a million pieces. But then Prince Kestrin has a similar fate, and he's also been turned into a statue. And so Alira kind of engages in this negotiation with the witch to be like, do you really need to be as violent as his grandfather was? And like, he has hope. Prince Kestrin isn't like his ancestors. And so the witch offers her a deal to be like, okay, well, if you can get through my 3 tests, there's always 3 tests when it comes to fairies. Then I'll release him and you can be free. And so I think it's the first test that he's turned into things. Is that right?
I think that might be the second one, because the first one, Alira wakes up and she's in the lady's body.
Oh,
and she's talking with Kestrin, and Kestrin is like on the verge of murdering her.
Kestrin's like in a dreamscape.
Yeah, and
right?
I think it's his soul or his heart, and it's all like barren and rocky wasteland, which red flag.
Yeah.
And basically Alira has to pretend to be the lady in a way that's convincing enough that he won't kill her, but also will believe that it's her. And it's basically just, like, don't allow yourself to feel hate. And, she's just trying to get revenge. And
yeah, because she tells Prince Kestrin, like, I have no power here. This is your world. And so in the witch's body, she has no magic and can't attack. And so it's a test for Kestrin to be like, are you going to attack an unarmed person who's doing nothing to you, despite like all appearances? And like he passes the first test, like after much like bitching.
Yeah. And then the second test, I think, is when he gets turned into like a
animals.
animal.
Yeah, I think the second test is
maybe it is the first test. One of the two.
One of the tests, he's turned into a bunch of like rabid animals that attack her or something, and she has to like not die and like convince him to like and hold on to him. Throw back to the original Tamlin fairy tale which we talked about already.
Yeah.
So they pass.
They do pass.
We've been talking for too long. So they pass both tests, and she's having a one-on-one with the lady again, and Kestron's kind of back in his like statue state, and she manages to convince the witch to not hold the third test.
I think it's because she's gotten like yeeted by these tests, and the lady's taking care of her because she has like puncture marks in her chest and her arm is like really burnt, and she's like, no, what, like I kind of like you and I like respect you for doing all of this, and like you're gonna get fucked up by a third trial, like just take your homeboy and like go, like it's fine. And I think even Alira is like,
really?
This
That
feels
simple?
like a trick. Like, are you sure? And she's like, don't. It's something snarky. Like, you can do it if you want to, but like, get the fuck out.
It was kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
But yeah, I guess Kestron wakes up and they all go back to the castle.
Basically, because she kind of is in her like princess suites and she gets better, and then like a week goes by. And then she finally talks to Kestron for the first time, and everything's like really awkward, which like, fair.
He explains like the wind thing and all of that.
Yeah.
They have like another fuck you Valka moment.
Yeah.
Where like
she's hung.
Yeah. Like she explains to Kestron like, hey, Valka's bad, but like we shouldn't be awful about the whole barrel.
Kind of, you know, a throwback to the lesson you just learned. Like, are we really not going to apply that to now this parallel situation?
Yeah. But there's also a scene where they kind of reflect on, or Alira reflects on her relationship with Kestron.
Yeah.
And there's a commentary about how like she can't quite feel love for him yet because of everything that they've been through and how they haven't had enough time yet. And I thought that was a very mature ending.
Yeah. I agree. Because she even says, too, like, I respect him and I trust him, but, like, maybe love will stem from that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's refreshing. Thank you for not just immediately launching them into lovey-doveyness.
So I guess if you're not really looking for a fantasy romance, this is not quite the book for you.
Yeah.
Like, it's very strongly implied, but, like, the overt romance nature isn't there. And I could see some people being dissatisfied with the way this ends.
I could see that, but I feel like, and maybe it comes from the place that we've read so much of this like fantasy story structure that I feel like I kind of expected that at the front end. Like I knew this wasn't going to be like totally like romancy just from the way it's structured. You're like, oh, okay. So
there's not enough build up in the beginning.
Yeah.
But you feel okay about it.
Yeah. I feel like romance would be slightly out of place in it almost.
It almost feels, what's that one that we just read? It's the Regency fairy tale one.
Oh, Half the Soul.
It kind of feels like that. The pacing a little bit.
Like, I could see that.
The romance angle is much stronger in Half a Soul, but it feels the same.
Yeah. I think it's probably the same structure because, I mean, you have all the buildup of things being like weird and out of place, and then they finally, you know, confront whatever fairy entity is making things happen, and then it's over.
It also feels, I'm looking behind you at the rows of books, the romance in this book, like very little there is, feels like Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh.
Sorcerer, meek heroine, a lot of action. They work together and solve like the crisis.
Yeah.
And then there's an implied romance, but not really.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie?
I loved the movie.
I love the movie too. I love his character. And the fact that it's voiced by Christian Bale.
Oh, that's half the reason I saw the movie. I saw that movie in theaters. I was
really,
because it came out like right after I read the book. Loved it. I was counting down. Oh my God. I was at
we're going through like a whole
we're going through a moment. I was at the Starbucks drive-thru like several weeks ago, and the barista reached through to hand me her coffee cup, and she had Calcifer, the little fire guy, just like tattooed on her forearm. And that was like the best. I looked at her like, Howl's Moving Castle, Howl's Moving Castle. And we like had this whole moment of bonding.
I love it.
Super cute. But back to Thorn.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of in that genre of storytelling, like fairy tale fantasy with a touch of romance.
It doesn't feel fully immersive.
Yeah.
You know those stories that you feel like you're part of the story?
Yeah.
Or like you feel so invested in the main character? it's not that.
Yeah. I would say Uprooted, I feel like kind of follows a similar fairy tale retelling structure, but that does feel immersive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like want that kind of experience, I feel like that's a good one to do because you fall into that one. But this one, you're kind of like, you're reading it.
Yeah. You're kind of half a step removed, but it's okay. You never feel like you want to put it down.
Yeah.
You can put it down
Mhm.
and not like feel like you're missing anything. But
Yeah. Because I busted through this in like a day and a half.
Yeah.
And that was only because I was playing Hogwarts Legacy
Fair.
also.
I was watching K-dramas, so
fair.
yeah.
But it is one you could read all at once.
Yeah. And this is the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so everything gets tidied up really nicely.
Mm-hmm. But it does feel kind of weird because like the ending scene is that Valka's hanging and then her body switches back and everybody's like, whoa, that's freaky. And then that's it. It's a kind of abrupt ending.
It's weird. And I would imagine if you were going to develop the characters in the storyline out more, especially the romance angle between Prince Kestrin and Alira, wouldn't there be some conflicts with like the level of attractiveness? Like, oh, you've created this relationship more with Alira in Valka's body, and Valka's described as this beautiful woman. Meanwhile, Alira has been acting like in Alira's body has been acting bitchy and bratty. Like, would you find that attractive? And how would that mess with your head?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that because now too, even though everyone obviously knows about this like body switching thing, you still would have those notions when you see that person for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's exactly what happened earlier in the story with the guards and them being like cold to Alira when Valka first switches into her body. It's the exact same thing that would probably happen now. Like all the street kids are going to be like, who the fuck are you? Like,
and maybe
where's the redhead?
Like Love is Blind doesn't work for this very reason because like relationships have some foundation in like physical attractiveness. Or not attractiveness as a thing, but like there is a connection between what your brain, like what you see and then what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it can influence your thoughts and behaviors towards that person.
Catfishing. I feel like that's a good example.
Yeah, 100%.
It would be fun if there was a second book and the love interest was switched to Red Hawk. So it pulls one of those like ACOTAR things, but it stems from like those issues where they just have too much baggage and maybe they like do the, betrothal thing for a while and they're like, this is not working. Like my friend was brutally murdered and raped and you didn't do anything. You were pretending to be the wind for my whole childhood.
They needed, in order to strengthen the relationship between Kestrin and Alira, they needed more scenes of her growing up with the wind.
Yeah.
And that relationship existing there.
Mm-hmm.
Because we never see it.
No. That is true. That's a good pointer. Because I think I'd focus so much on the Red Hawk angle because they do have several, like 3 or 4 interactions where they have like very significant, deep conversations about like significant issues. And you're like, okay, this feels like...
It feels like her conversations with Red Hawk are as deep as those with Kestrin, if not deeper.
Yeah. So that's why I got bamboozled by this like red herring named Red Hawk. Like, wait a second. Oh, yeah. I felt a little smart when I was doing that. But I was like, wait a second. But I don't know. Because even at the end of during the hanging or something, we get a little like eye spot with Red Hawk. And he like kind of gives her the nod like, yeah, you're back in your body, huh? And then he like disappears into the crowd. So it's just like, who is that guy? Like, why was he just there for help?
Can we find out live if Red Hawk gets his own story? Like, what is the second book?
I know, because it'd be fun too if he got some totally different story arc where there's like some nurse, helper, doctor figure, and they have a relationship or something.
I don't know, but I mean, so that's good though.
Yeah.
So that's Thorn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Back to like what the actual story is.
Before we get sidetracked too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was good. It's really short. It's one of those that if it's a little bit cloudy and overcast and you're kind of like it's a Saturday or a day off and you're like, I don't really want to do anything. I'm just going to sit and read. This is a nice one that it's like not going to give you a book hangover necessarily.
Our next book will give you a book hangover.
We're reading Master of Crows next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, it gives me a book. I'm like kind of dreading reading it because I know I'm going to have a hangover after. I might read the second one in the story after.
Oh, what's it called?
Storm of Crows or Chrome Storm.
I
don't know.
I can picture it.
I made that up. Yeah.
Flight of Ravens or something.
Yeah. I heard it's not quite as good as the first one, so I'm kind of a little bit hesitant, but it'll be a treat to.
I don't know. I don't need a second book in the
That is true. That was a surprising one that I'm like, there's so many other books that need second books that the one maybe did not.
Yeah. So brace yourselves. And it's also long too, right? Master of Crows is?
Yeah. It doesn't feel long though, because there's enough smut to like get you through it without realizing how long it is. I will say, yes, this is a spicy read that we're going to do.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, because it's been a while since you've read it, right?
Yeah, I've only read it once.
Oh, okay. I've read it like 2 or 3 times. Okay, so readers, listen to how candid and like casual Jordan is right now, because she's going to get so Victorian lady when she actually picks this book up again.
I'm already embarrassed.
It's a spicy read. So, but honestly, it's the best. Like $1.99, $4.99.
Yeah,
buy this fucking book. It's so good.
We just ordered the hard copy versions, which you can find. I found our hard copies through ABE Books. So they're en route, but it's like an indie publisher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like I looked on Amazon to find the hard copy, and you can't.
Interesting.
So support.
That makes sense. Yeah, small businesses. And Grace Draven also, I think, is fighting cancer right now. The author of the book, where she is almost in remission. So just like read the book and give her a little bit of extra support, because I can't imagine how crippling that is to a family.
Yeah.
Master of Crows, though. God damn.
Oh, man.
I'm so excited.
I cannot wait to read this book again. So
anyways,
from our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thanks for listening.
Bussin'.